Welcome to Echoes of War. In this video, we will be covering the 10-year Trojan War. Thank you for watching and enjoy.
Welcome to this explainer. We're diving into one of the most foundational, honestly just sprawling narratives in all of human history, the Trojan War. It's a massive 10-year epic. It takes the magical, divine world of Greek mythology and crashes it right into the gritty, archaeological reality of the Late Bronze Age. We're talking love, betrayal, impossible heroism, and just absolute devastating destruction. But to really wrap our heads around this, we have to start with a question that sounds kind of absurd. Did a single golden apple really destroy an entire, insanely wealthy civilization? I know, it sounds crazy, but it was exactly this. A petty little slight at a mythological wedding that lit the match for the ancient world's most legendary conflict. So, here's our roadmap. We'll kick things off with the golden apple, slog through a decade of war, feel the rage of Achilles, uncover the wooden horse, deal with the bitter aftermath, and then finally see where myth meets historical reality. We're tracking the whole domino effect, from a squabble on Mount Olympus right down to the fiery ashes of Troy. All right, Section 1, the Golden Apple and the Origins of the War. So the whole thing actually starts at a party, specifically the wedding of the mortal king Peleus and the sea goddess Thetis. Literally every deity was invited, except one, Eris, the goddess of discord. Well, furious at being left off the guest list, she crashes the party anyway and tosses a golden apple right into the crowd. And written on this apple, to the fairest. Boom! Instant chaos. Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite all claim it. Zeus very wisely refuses to touch this argument, so he makes a Trojan prince named Paris the judge. The goddesses? They immediately resort to bribery. Hera offers him immense power over all of Asia. Athena promises absolute wisdom and guaranteed victory in battle. But Aphrodite, she offers him the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen. Paris, well, thinking with his heart, goes with Aphrodite. But that promise, it had a horrific domino effect, because Helen was already married to King Menelaus of Sparta. When Paris headed over to Sparta and took Helen back to Troy, whether he abducted her or they fell in love, depending on the version you read, it triggered a massive geopolitical meltdown. See, years earlier, all of Helen's incredibly powerful suitors swore a binding oath to defend her marriage. Menelaus and his brother, Agamemnon, called in that marker. They summoned heavy hitters like Achilles, Odysseus, and Ajax. Legend has it they launched a massive coalition of over 1,000 ships, all sailing straight for Troy. Moving on to Section 2, a decade of war and the stalemate at Troy. So when the Greeks finally hit the beaches of Troy, they're staring down this incredibly wealthy, massively fortified city. Now, you might picture the Trojan War as this one giant, non-stop cinematic battle, right? But the reality of the lore is that almost all of it was just an exhausting, grueling 10-year stalemate. The Greeks set up this heavily fortified camp right on the beach, and for years they're just doing endless coastal raids, minor skirmishes, and constantly failing to starve the Trojans out. Neither side could get the upper hand. It was just a brutal, grinding war of attrition. And during all this waiting and skirmishing, we really see the contrast between the two biggest champions. On the Greek side, you've got Achilles. He's practically invulnerable, he's obsessed with individual glory, and honestly, he's mostly fueled by pure rage. Then, over on the Trojan side, there's Hector. Hector is totally different. He fights out of this profound sense of duty. He's just an honorable guy desperately trying to protect his family and his city from complete annihilation. Which brings us to Section 3, the rage of Achilles, which is the main focus of the Iliad. Now that rage is the absolute core of Homer's Iliad. And here's the thing, the Iliad doesn't actually cover the whole 10-year war. It literally just zooms in on a few incredibly bloody weeks right at the end. The ancient Greeks valued the sheer intensity of these final weeks so much that their artisans painstakingly recorded them. Looking at these incredible archaic and classical vases with their black figure and red figure pottery techniques, you can really see how they kept the violent reality and the epic heroism of these stories front and center in Greek daily life. So how does this tragic climax actually go down? It starts when the Greek commander, Agamemnon, completely disrespects Achilles by taking away his war prize, a woman named Briseis. Achilles gets so incredibly mad that he just packs up his gear and refuses to fight. Without him, the Greeks get absolutely hammered. Things get so bad that Achilles' best friend, Patroclus, begs to borrow his armor to scare the Trojans back. It works, until Patroclus is killed by Hector. and that just breaks Achilles. Consumed by this apocalyptic, world-ending grief, he goes back out there, slaughters his way through the Trojan lines, and brutally kills Hector. But Achilles doesn't get to celebrate for long. Soon after, Paris, with a little guiding hand from the god Apollo, shoots Achilles in literally his one vulnerable spot, his heel, taking down the greatest of the Greeks.
Next up, Section 4, the wooden horse, and Odysseus's brilliant deception. Okay, so their best fighter is dead, the walls of Troy are still standing strong, and the Greeks are desperate. They need a miracle, and they get one, thanks to the incredibly devious mind of Odysseus. You know the story. They build this massive wooden horse, stash their elite commandos inside, and pretend to just sail away, totally defeated. But they leave behind this highly deceptive and honestly pretty darkly ironic inscription that says the Greeks dedicate this offering to Athena in supplication for their safe return home. Well, the Trojans actually buy it. They think the war is finally over. So they drag this giant peace offering right inside their impenetrable walls, completely ignoring the frantic warnings from their prophet Cassandra and the priest Laocoon.
And we all know what happens next. That night, while Troy sleeps it off, the Greeks slip out of the horse, open the main gates for their returning army, and just unleash absolute hell. Looking at this depiction of the sack of Troy, you can see how harrowing it truly was. That's Neoptolemus, the son of Achilles, mercilessly attacking the elderly Trojan king Priam right on a sacred altar. It perfectly captures the brutal, unforgiving reality of this myth. The men were slaughtered, the women were enslaved, and this once magnificent city was just burned to ash. That takes us to Section 5, the bitter aftermath and the fates of the survivors. You'd think winning the biggest war in history would mean a happy ending, right? Definitely not. Victory absolutely did not mean a peaceful homecoming. The horrific cost of this devastation really haunted everyone. Take King Agamemnon. He finally makes it back to Mycenae, only to be brutally murdered by his own wife. Odysseus gets cursed by the gods and has to spend 10 agonizing years wandering the sea, fighting monsters, just to get back to his family. The mighty Ajax? He meets a super tragic end after a bitter feud with his own allies over Achilles' armor. But on the flip side, the Trojan hero Aeneas manages to escape the burning ruins of Troy, and he sets off on a legendary journey that, according to the Romans, eventually leads to the founding of Rome itself. Finally, let's hit Section 6, where myth meets historical reality, looking at the archaeological truth. For the longest time, centuries really, people assumed Homer's epic was just a good story, pure fiction. But the real-world history here is absolutely fascinating. Back in the 19th century, an archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann started digging in northwestern Turkey. And guess what? He found Troy. He uncovered multiple layers of a real city that had been violently destroyed right around 1200 BC. Historically speaking, this city sat on a massive, vital choke point controlling the extremely lucrative Dardanelles trade routes. So realistically, economics, not a stolen bride, is probably what sparked a massive conflict there. But what's wild is that we have physical artifacts backing up the poetry. Like the Dendra armor, it's a full suit of Mycenaean bronze plates with a boar tusk helmet from the 15th century BCE. It literally proves that these Bronze Age Greeks were fighting in the exact kind of heavy armor that Homer was singing about hundreds of years later. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this to think about. As we keep digging through the literal ashes of the late Bronze Age, where exactly does the myth of Troy end and history begin? Did real men bleed out in the dirt over shipping lanes and trade routes, only to be immortalized as these towering demigods fighting for love and honor? The fact that we can't quite untangle the poetic legend from the historical truth, well, that's exactly why the Trojan War is a story we are never ever going to forget.